with another Wi-Fi podcast. Brian, how you doing?
Good. We're running late.
Yeah, we're just too busy. Too many projects
I
going on
know.
right now.
Too many projects, too many new customers coming in.
New customers, yeah. I mean, they
Yeah.
got to go with the vendors that have product that they can install right now.
Yeah.
I mean, we have the stuff. So
Yeah.
let us
Yeah.
know. All right, so I saw an article on Tom's Guide this morning about how to speed up your Wi-Fi and some myths that people think versus reality, like how
Yeah.
placement of the access points and
Yeah.
or router.
Yeah. You kind of surprised me with some of the myths that you
Yeah,
mentioned. I
yeah.
was like,
Some of these I
people
haven't
really think
heard.
that?
I thought I heard everything, but some of these are pretty funny. Um, so what's slowing down your Wi-Fi? So yeah, I mean, AP placement's important. Like you can do a predictive site survey, but if you don't draw in like what's in the environment, like usually we just draw on walls, right? Um,
Yeah.
we draw on walls because we don't know what's going to be in that environment to be able to, and that's kind of above and beyond what you do in that situation anyway. But when you're when you're choosing a place to put your access points, you want to put them away from like in the home, away from large appliances. That should
Yeah.
be pretty simple, right? Um,
Yeah. People. Yeah. I mean, people definitely get lazy, and they're not. I shouldn't say lazy. Maybe they're trying to hide it
yeah,
or something, and they place it like you and I were just talking about on top of a refrigerator.
yeah. So yeah, if you put it on top of a refrigerator, that refrigerator is all metal. It's gonna block a lot of the signal. It's
Yeah.
probably hot up there. It may heat up there. Or putting it near like a dryer or something that's spinning.
Microwave.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say that. So first, I was going with things that don't really interfere, but yeah,
Yeah.
you put it near something that has spinning metal, like a dryer, a stove, that has a lot of metal in it. So any kind of
Yeah.
appliances or in a warehouse environment, like giant metal machinery, presses, or
Yeah.
things like that, that's not a great place to mount the access point. And then you
No.
mentioned the microwave. So some appliances will interfere. The only thing we really know about is the microwave is 2.4 gigahertz interference for 11 BGN AC.
Yeah.
And Wi-Fi 6 uses 2.4 too. So microwaves can interfere with that. There's some specific devices like maybe cordless phones, which not many people have anymore, can
Yeah.
be on the 2.4 and 5.8 frequencies. So
But we have
things
a
like
just a
that.
really quick note. We have a 900 megahertz
Right.
cordless phone, so that
Yeah.
won't interfere.
Yeah, and Genius has the 900 megahertz, and like I have some headphones for TV headphones. They're 900 megahertz. Got those specifically so they wouldn't interfere or be interfered with. So yeah,
Yeah.
you have appliance. So the big thing though is like don't place the access points near big metal boxes. Any kind of appliances or
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
or things
Exactly.
like that, right? Now the other thing
Yeah.
is
You want to kind of center the access point, and obviously away from these things, and
yeah,
you basically want clear line of sight from the client device to the AP. That's like the best case scenario, and you want to be close to the access point. They're all best case scenarios, and that can't always happen. But if you centrally locate the AP where the activity is or where
hmm
the clients are, that's going to be a good area.
yeah, you want to get as close to the client devices users as possible. And another thing is to mount the access point up high if possible, not too high, but if you mount it up high, it usually has a better line of sight,
Yeah.
and the signal gets to spread out more, right? Like that
But
should
what if it's
be.
30 feet high? Would you do it
Well,
30 feet
no, I
high?
mean, no. So if it's too high, that's just subtracting from the distance that the Wi-Fi is
Yeah.
going to go. So if you have
Yep.
let's say 60-foot ceiling in a warehouse, like you may want to suspend the access points or put them on the wall in that situation, right? Because you want it to be as close as possible. You also it's good to mount them high so the signal can spread out, though, in general.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's another thing you can do to speed up your Wi-Fi. Another thing, neighbors' Wi-Fi. Now, people, I guess, don't realize that if you have neighbors that close by, especially like in apartment buildings or in office spaces that they're using the same channels as you, they could be stepping on your Wi-Fi channels, and there's really not a lot of ways around that. That's why like a good auto channeling system is really needed in those situations. You really can't pick channels on 2.4, 1, 6, and 11 are what you should be choosing between, right? Because those are all non-overlapping. But you can't pick one and stick with it because your neighbors could be changing channels all the time. You don't know.
Yeah.
You really
they may be on auto channel or something like that. Or...
Yeah, so and especially with like these meshing systems like the Eros and stuff, they'll like use the whole spectrum and just like step on everything.
Well, I mean, Sonos, right?
Sonos also uses like a full 2.4 gigahertz channel. So if you have your Sonos set on, I forget how the channels go, but if it's set on a certain channel, it's gonna use that whole 2.4 gigahertz channel spectrum for like one channel.
And they're meshing too, right?
They mesh, but it uses its own protocol, which is just pure interference to Wi-Fi. So it's called Sonos Net, and if you plug in a Sonos speaker you plug the Ethernet in, it's going to automatically bring up that Sonos Net on one of the 2.4 channels and cause like interference for any kind of Wi-Fi
We've seen that
devices.
many times.
Yeah, I mean, supposedly they like doing it because it's their protocol, their wireless protocol is pretty good, but you can also run Sonos over Wi-Fi. So, that's kind of what I'd recommend. I'm running mine on Wi-Fi. I don't have any problems doing that.
Yeah.
That's another device that definitely can interfere. But yeah, neighbors' Wi-Fi is something to think about. So, look at your channel utilization. If you have a spectrum analyzer or like one of the security access points with the built-in spectrum analyzer, you can kind of check out what your neighboring businesses or homes are using with that spectrum analyzer, and maybe
you can look at it through, what is it, Channel Pro?
What's Channel Pro?
I've seen a couple of the guys out there talking about, I think Channel Pro, but what was the one?
Yeah, there's a couple like free like Wi-Fi stumbler apps out there, but they kind of come and go whether they work or not. Like
we experienced that firsthand, right?
Yeah, there used to be a Net Stumbler or whatever. I don't think that's around anymore. That you could but there are a few that you can look to see what kind of channels you're on. Because when just your standard Windows 11 won't show you channel. It will, I guess. It'll show you once you're connected, but you can't see like what else is out there.
Yeah, no, it won't scan the environment at all.
Right. So those are some things. Now, some myths that they were talking about that I haven't heard some of these. That some people think if they turn off their router at night, that when they wake up in the morning, Wi-Fi's gonna be way faster.
It is. Yeah, it does work.
Does that work?
The router's resting.
It's resting, so the Wi-Fi is stronger when you plug it in the morning. I mean, there may be something to do with like the routers are overheating because they've got them like, sitting on top of like the heater, the radiator,
top of the refrigerator,
the radiator, and it could be overheating, and then once it cools down, it's faster. But if it's in like an area that it should be, like you should definitely place it in an area that has airflow also, because these devices can overheat. For sure. A lot of people try to jam them back of the TV or like inside a cabinet, like where your cable modem is, and that thing gets to be like 200 degrees in there, and then you could definitely have some performance issues.
Yeah.
But
and a reboot, if you're turning off and you're basically just doing a reboot sometimes.
Yeah. So that I can see that. Like, so if someone has like an open Wi-Fi SSID where people are just all their neighbors are jumping on it.
Yeah.
that then when they unplug it at night, it disconnects everyone. They plug it in. And,
top security, man. Right
there. I mean, that's what they're seeing. They may not understand what's happening there, but people are jumping on it as soon as they plug it in. So yeah, of course, it's faster when they first fire it up in the morning. So yeah, that I guess that might make sense to some people. But yeah, that was a pretty funny one. And then people also thinking that if they have a hotspot on their phone, that it's faster than a Wi-Fi connection in general. It's not. I mean, if you have a really bad hotel or something that, airport, there's a lot of people using the Wi-Fi, maybe your hotspot on your phone would be faster. But in general,
Yeah.
like if you have a cable modem at home, it's going to be way faster than the hotspot.
Yeah, you don't want to use that cellular. Yeah, you don't want to use the cellular side.
Use it in emergency. I mean, I do use it if I'm in a hotel and a lot. I have unlimited, so I feel that the hotspot on the phone is more secure than jumping on the hotel Wi-Fi. Maybe.
Yeah.
So I'll use it whenever I can. But it's not necessarily the fastest. That's not true. Wi-Fi is way faster in most cases. So yeah, those are some of the myths that I saw. So that was pretty interesting. But in general, mount the things high, keep them away from appliances. Check your channels. Make sure the channels are free if you have a spectrum analyzer or something like that. Basically, all you can do.
Channel width is another one.
Channel width. You can adjust that. If you don't want to be on 160 megahertz channels on 5.8, say. If you have a lot of neighbors around. If you don't have any neighbors and only one access point or router, maybe you could do that.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe you can get away with it.
Yeah, so you got to look at all that stuff. All right, so another thing I wanted to talk about is like warehouse deployments. I had some customers this week asking me about deploying Wi-Fi in warehouses. So this is kind of like a unique situation, right? Like, we have heat mapping software that can factor in a lot of things. And Ekahau or Genius's Wi-Fi planner. You can draw on walls. You can put in shelving probably, but you really can't predict what's going to be on those shelves. This is one of the situations where you really have to go out there with an access point.
And you want to make sure, like in a warehouse, that this might be hard to do. You want to make sure those racks are full to give you to give you worst case scenario. Like if you go in there, it's a new warehouse, they have racks up, but there's nothing in the racks. Mm-hmm. The experience is going to be way different when they put stuff in the racks. So you got to be really careful of that.
Exactly. So yeah, you want to plan for the worst case scenario, and the devices being used are usually like really, really low power. So maybe your new iPhone can see a good signal, but they may be using like
RF readers.
Barcode readers. Barcode scanners. A lot of them are probably 11B still, if that's what they're using. I think they've probably evolved to using like smartphone scanners and things like that now. But those things are still probably have pretty bad Wi-Fi on them.
For sure.
So you have to also plan for your smallest device. Now, a couple places you can mount these, like usually we'll say, if you have a warehouse that let's say has a 60-foot ceiling, but then let's say you have shelving that goes up to 40 feet or something, right? You probably want to try to extend those access points from the ceiling so that they're just over clearing the shelves. To get them closer to those client devices and not like wasting any signal.
Yeah.
And you want to mount them like between rows. So yeah, you could have a warehouse and be like, it has X amount of square feet, and you'd be like, yeah, one access point should cover this whole warehouse. Yeah. That's what people think, like, oh, it's only this big, one access point's going to cover it. But what you're really planning for is those shelves and any kind of metal machinery that's in there, like we talked about before.
Yep. And you might even get into like more directional antenna kind of cases, where we've done it early on. We learned this, that you can shoot the signal down the hallways or the aisleways on both ends, and that typically works.
Yeah.
As long as the aisles are not too far or too long, because in the center of the aisle you might have issues there, so you just got to be careful there. But if you can hang them over above, like you're saying, drop them down so they're closer to the client devices without getting hit by a forklift.
Yeah.
That is best case scenario. But if you can't go overhead and you maybe have to do walls or shoot them down the aisleways, that might be the other way to do it too.
Yeah.
So yes, just different ways of doing it depending on the availability to the environment and what they're willing to do, I guess.
Yeah. So if you're wall mounting, you want to get something that has like at least a semi-directional antenna, like the ceiling mount access points do, right? Like the ECW 230. If you ceiling mount it, the signal is going to shoot down. If you wall mount it, the signal will shoot away.
Yeah, they'll shoot out.
away. But if you use an omnidirectional antenna and access point, maybe an outdoor access point, and mount it on the wall, that signal, you're going to lose like half of that signal to the wall.
Yep. So we'll normally use like our ECW 260, which is removable antenna, and put flat panel antennas on there and shoot it down shoot it that way, or even above. Like maybe you can hang you kind of probably have to be a little bit careful, but you're using external flat panel antennas from the ceiling and hanging the antennas down, but you just got to be careful with that.
You could do it. You could use external antennas, but it gets a lot more complicated. Getting the antennas, the connectors, and all that stuff.
There's loss in the antenna cable into the connectors.
Yeah, so unless you're have been working with a certain flat panel antenna that is going to give you the right signal, I mean, it's gonna. I wouldn't mess with it probably. I just use if you're gonna overhead mount, omnidirectional antennas would be better, I guess, because you're spreading the signal out. Still, a lot of it's gonna go up though. You're gonna lose it in the up direction then. So I think that the ceiling mount would work well either mounting from above or from the walls.
Yeah,
if you're doing it that way. But anything else? What else have you run in with warehouses? I know it's kind of a big thing.
I mean, one of the things that we did a warehouse in Canada, and they were doing engine blocks.
Yeah.
Where so we had to shoot the signal down the hallways. We couldn't go above. I think above it was too high or something like that. So that it was 11 AC. We're using our ENS 500 series to shoot them down the hallways, and that worked really well. But I think we covered a lot of it. I mean, they're complicated but not complicated. That's the kind of way I look, because we've done so many of them.
As long as you go about it, understanding that you're covering, you have to cover those shelving areas, the rows, not just the whole area.
Yeah, the other thing that you brought up, which is really important, is understanding the device you're trying to communicate to. Yeah. Like a scanning gun. I mean, some of the scanning guns out there are super old, and they're using 11B, right?
Yeah.
And the radio output power is, fairly low. Antenna design's probably terrible on them or whatever, but or they're using a smartphone, with a scanning tool or something like that. As long as you keep that in mind and keep in mind of the aisleways, like you're saying, then it should help you work outward and be able to design a network to support them.
Yeah, and I mean, using indoor access points is fine as long as it's regular room temperatures in there. They're not going to be affected by, dust or anything like that, really. Not really. Possibly, but not really. But if you have a warehouse that's refrigerated or something like that, then definitely, obviously, outdoor EPs, wet, humidity, then you're going to want to use outdoor EPs.
I have something to bring up that we didn't talk about bringing up. So there was a post, there's somebody that did a Marina Wi-Fi.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
That.
Did a Marina Wi-Fi installation with outdoor APs, but inside a NEMA enclosure as well.
Yeah.
Right, so what's your take on that?
I don't know. I don't think it's a good idea because, those are outdoor APs. They're designed to be outdoors and handle, they have to handle heat, cold, humidity, water, all that stuff. Right now, if you put them in an enclosure, you think, it's even better in the enclosure, but I think they could overheat in there, number one. The sun's beating down those things all day long. And
at a marina?
In a marina, and there's no room for cooling when they're inside a box like that.
Yeah, maybe they did cooling, and I didn't, on the surface, don't look at it.
And it may not, those things, I saw those enclosures, they're aluminum backed, so maybe if they mount to that, it'll cool, sink the heat a little bit, but I don't know.
Even more so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think they did it for aesthetics, people just didn't want to see them.
It looked super clean. It did. It looked
Yeah,
really clean. It looked really nice. You might not even notice it if you walked by it.
yeah,
That looked really good. But yeah, you want to definitely be careful of that. I mean, we're deploying IP55 rated, which is one of the lower ratings
yeah.
outdoor devices in the Caribbean, all the way up to Canada.
Mm-hmm.
South America, everywhere. IP55, and it does pretty well. And our access points today are probably IP67, IP68. IP68 is the highest rating, so
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
or one of
I
the
can
highest
see. I
ratings.
guess like they're worried about salt environment and things like that. Could have an effect on the antenna connectors maybe.
Well,
Um,
we have IP68 on oil rigs.
yeah, yeah. So I
I
mean,
mean,
they're
phew,
fine to install anywhere outdoors, and we have them like ski resorts have them, and they're in ice and snow all year, and
yeah,
so there's no need for that enclosure. I don't know if it'll do anything bad to them, but they'll find out, I guess.
yeah.
All right, Brian. Anything else you want to talk about this week?
I think that's it,
All
man.
right, sounds good. Well, there you go. There's how to speed up your Wi-Fi. And
Turn the
like and
router off at
subscribe.
night.
Yeah, turn the router off at night. Subscribe, like and